Hey, Mrparka here to review the United States Arrow Blu-ray release of Contamination. This is a Luigi Cozzi film. I believe that's how you say his name. I'm not necessarily sure. This was actually released on DVD here in the States by Blue Underground some years ago. And I had, you know what, I don't know if I've ever seen the whole movie, but this movie's, I've seen most of this movie just in bits and pieces because it's fairly memorable. So I checked out the Blu-ray and I watched it and I remembered why I didn't finish it, but I also really liked the movie at the same time. Contamination also has another claim to fame for the score being by Goblin, here credited as the Goblin, which is pretty incorrect, but you know, guys know the thing with Dario Argento and the Goblins and things like that with the Dawn of the Dead, how they credited them. So it's not the first time Goblin has been miscredited. This movie also had its soundtrack ripped, along with Dawn of the Dead soundtrack ripped for a movie called Hell of the Living Dead, aka Night of the Zombies, aka, I believe, what is that? There's like 3 or 4 titles for that movie. But regardless, you guys will, if you've seen if you guys have seen Hell of the Living Dead, you'll be familiar with the soundtrack. Essentially, what we have here is an opening very similar to Zombie, where there's this boat in a harbor kind of going crazy. No one knows who's on it. Also, Jurassic Park 2 at the end of that. And what happens here is they enter the boat and they find these weird green eggs. They explode when they get hot, and everybody's stomachs start exploding. They find out some weird bacteria, and it's very entertaining for the first 30 to 40 minutes or so. Later on, they track it to this warehouse, and there's more eggs and some crazy gut exploding, nasty, gory Italian special effects, a cool space scene, and things like that. And then they track down the astronaut who claimed to see these eggs years ago, and that is Ian I never say his name right, but he's in Zombie and Zombie Holocaust. Ian McCulloch or Ian McCulloch. I mispronounced that. Ian, it's like Mccoull, something like that. I can't remember necessarily. Sorry about that. But he's an English actor, and he was in a few video nasties. Great story about him talking about telling his brother-in-law that he was in it, and he said, "How could you?" and stuff like that. If you guys watch video nasties or documentary, I believe it's on, or the Faulty documentary. But regardless, Contamination looks pretty good for an old film. I believe it's 1980, 81, somewhere around there. It does look a little soft, looks a little white, but that's kind of, a lot of movies end up looking like that when they're remastered, or like that period. Maybe it's just the elements they had. But if you enjoy the film, I check out the release. There's a lot of special features on here. The music's also really very memorable, probably one of the most memorable parts about it. And like I said, the first 30 minutes of this movie are really great, I must say. And then there's like a 25 to 35 minute gap of the movie that's kind of boring. It's kind of like a spy film where they track it to, I believe, South America, and it just introduces these other characters, and there's a twist, and it's just not very entertaining, and it makes the characters come off kind of dumb and unintelligent. I mean, somebody throws an egg in one of their rooms. This is a colonel here, and instead of, you know, throwing like the shower curtain over it or putting something over the egg so it didn't explode on her, or she just bangs on the door and screams for help. And this character is established as kind of a tough, you know, character, and then it's just like they completely turn into an idiot at that point. I don't know if that was just to move the story along or make one of the guys more heroic than her, but it was kind of odd. And like I said, the 25-minute gap is kind of just, it is entertaining, but it's just because it's so goofy at points, but it's just not as good as the first 30 minutes, and setting up to be the great 30 minutes that it is, and then they have that boring 30 minutes, and then the last 20 minutes or so is actually entertaining as well, where you introduce the Cyclops creature, which reminds me of something from Science Team, or what's the other one? The Mold Nose Jack. But yeah, if you guys have seen those movies, it's kind of like this big blob. It is cheap looking, but it is entertaining, and it's kind of controlling the whole operation. Regardless, the last 15-20 minutes is entertaining. The first 30 minutes is great. The special effects are gory and cheap and really cool at the same time. I really enjoy the special effects. The eggs are funny looking, and they use a miniature for the astronaut scene, which is cool, and it looks like there's little green peas for the eggs in it. I enjoyed that. All in all, this movie is we're tracking down, if you like Italian horror films, especially Alien or Alien ripoffs. If you guys like, what's that movie, Alien 2? Not to be confused with Aliens by James Cameron, but there was one called Alien 2. If you're into that, if you're into Alien, or like the kind of Italian ripoffs, or maybe even something like Zombie or something. Zombie's a much better film. All those films I listed are probably better, except maybe Alien 2's on par with it. Some great moments in that, and then some boring scenes as well. But yeah, it looks pretty solid, actually. The first 30 30 minutes is gold. I wish the whole movie would have been the first 30 minutes, and we would have had one of the better Italian horror films ever made, and I'm a big fan of those. But as it loses a little of its steam in the middle. But that's Contamination. I'm not sure when this release will be out. Very shortly, I believe. I think it's a DVD Blu-ray combo, or just at least a Blu-ray for sure. I know there's an old DVD, like I said, from Arrow. I like what they're doing. You know, not every print in these old movies can look the best, but this one looks pretty solid, I think, especially for something like Contamination. But I'm Mrparka. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.
Bridge. It's not answering our radio calls. Hey, Matt, suspense is killing me. What do you think?
There's not a soul in sight. Really weird.
There's somebody in there, I'm sure of it. Do you mean they come from outer space?
Why not? How many worlds are there in the universe? Millions. Perhaps billions.
Unless they come from much closer, but...
Mars has always stimulated man's imagination. But as far as that cave was concerned, there was absolutely nothing in there.
You were telling the truth all along.
But these are photographs. But there hasn't been another expedition to Mars.
No. These were found here, on Earth. Thousands of them.
The woman is Stella Holmes, a first-class mind.
Who's there?
Gentleman and lady would like information about our coffee.
All your questions will be answered here. It's too late. Hamilton has got your friends.